wanted, and it brought out the petrol bombs and the rioting and the barricades and cordoning off communities from the police and not letting them in. Because then what they did was they started raiding Irish communities and taking young teenage boys and men without trial, handcuffed, into internment camps, prison camps, H Block, the Maze prison. That, you know, there's 3 or 4 main prisons. No trial, no nothing, kept on in there under lock and key. And that's when the hunger strikers started.
No, before that, for me, it was late 70s, early 80s.
Oh, okay.
And we had to run the gauntlet of 15 different fucking armed militias.
But why was there a border? I don't understand. Like, this is where you guys lost.
Northern Ireland is United Kingdom. Southern Ireland is Republic of Ireland.
I know that, I know, but when did that conflict start? Because I always thought that it started in the 90s.
69.
No. When the British left Ireland, they didn't leave without leaving a wedge. It's like they did in India. Before they left, they divided India into India and Pakistan so that there'd be future conflict, giving them the opportunity to come back in and remeddle in the whole affair. So before they pulled out of Ireland, they did an election, and they determined that the population of the 6 counties of Northern Ireland, which were mostly now planted by Protestant, Scottish, Presbyterian and English planters, were refusing to be part of the new Irish Free State. So they would be given their separation and separateness from the 26 counties, and they would still retain their British identity. So that was maintained from 1922 up until the year 2022, when that 100-year lease dissolves, you know.
Okay.
But most of the people of Northern Ireland have no idea about that lease, that it's just like Israel, that piece of land, it has a lease and it's expired. Mm-hmm. So there is no British territory called Northern Ireland officially still.
How did the conflict start? For us that don't know, how did it all start? How did it get that bad?
In the late 60s, 1969, the current conflict kicked off. And there's just so much discrimination down there, people started to riot. So the British sent in the army. So the British army were on the streets of Northern Ireland, and at protests, people were getting shot.
Wow.
They were called
many people, 10 people, 12 people, 13 people, all, you know, that amount of people were getting shot and killed at protests. The next thing, this 3-letter agency that we had in Ireland, which was just a CIA, Catholic intelligence agency, militia, and then they kicked off the conflict all over again, and we fucking fought and killed each other for another 25 years until the current agreement came in that we would stop shooting and killing each other. You know,
killed each other. Who are you talking about? Are you saying that some of the Southern Irish were siding with the British, like the official army?
No, the Northern Irish, the planted people, the Protestant people that they brought in from Scotland and England,
north. Okay,
they sided with the British,
gotcha.
And the Irish people sided with the National Militia, 3-letter agency.
Gotcha.
And in that way, they kept the conflict going. And I had many friends lost their lives, but guys I went to school with lost their lives. I didn't get involved in it. We were fucking smugglers. I said the S word. But we had to run the gauntlet of all these militias along the border.
How bad was it? How bad was the war? Like, do you guys remember?
Well, I was living in Belfast.
A bomb went off half a mile from me one day and killed my friend's mother. and killed my sister's friend and a number of other people. And it was close.
Two explosions that were done by the Ulster Protestant Orange Force up there with the collusion.
I don't think so. I don't think so. These were MI6.
I agree. I fully agree. But externally, they were supposedly of that community. But with the collusion of certain factors in our defence force, our policing force, 2 bombs were allowed to be brought to Dublin and detonated. One of them killed a lady, a girl. She was only in her teenage, and she was a little older than us. And she actually used to babysit the kids next door to me. And she went in on Saturday afternoon shopping into Dublin, and she was killed by this car bomb. And her father, family, nobody ever got over it after that. It was devastating, and it was so close to home for me. Yeah, it led to the burning of the British Embassy in Dublin. It led to much more heightened difficulties after that. That the bombs were going
this week. 50 years ago this week.
What did you say, Jim? 50 years this week?
50 years ago this week. It was on the 17th. There was 33 people killed in Dublin that day.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. 2 bombs, 33 people. That's right.
So they were pretty much using the same tactics they're still using. Like when you were away, Jim, we were talking with Chief, and I'm realizing, I'm like, they've been using this shit for thousands of years, man. Like there's certain tactics that they use,
And by doing that, it provoked so much hostility in Ireland that, of course, it automatically got membership into the IRA. And, of course, the IRA, under Gerry Adams and McGuinness, these 2 head honchos, they were secretly agents of MI6. So the Irish Republican movement was fully compromised from day one, you see? And this way, they had a handle on us. And
what was their end goal? What did they want to achieve with this war?
To keep Ireland under Rome rule, to make the people support Rome and support the Catholic Church, because the Catholic Church gave their support to the IRA and encouraged the people at times to fight back. And basically, without this conflict, Ireland would have kicked Rome out to fuck years before. Having the conflict kept the people attached to the Catholic Church, and the people on the other side attached to their Protestant church to maintain Rome rule. Basically,
what's uniting you guys? Because the language is almost gone, as Chief said. Like, what is still uniting one idea for you guys as you? Like that you're separate, that you've been
fake Irish fucking nationalism, patriotism of that's what has got the people united in Dublin now. Oh, we want our Ireland back, and some stupid fucking idiot people, we want our Roman Catholic Ireland back.
Yeah.
Little do they realize who the fucking culprits are here.
Who runs the slaughterhouses? Yeah, of our.
So, Chief, Jim, during that time, he was bringing goods back and forth. How do you remember those times? And you were also coming into the knowledge, and like, how do you remember those years when the conflict was going on?
This is where myself and Jim, we didn't meet until, as I said, into the mid-90s, and we were much older. I had left that town, provincial town. My father got transferred to Dublin. He took over the port of Dublin in customs and excise. And I spent my formative years, my teenage years, say from 10 years onwards, from 9 years onwards, living in the south of County Dublin. And Dublin would have been my main home. And I didn't really experience the conflict until it really came home with the death of this girl from my neighborhood who died in that bombing in Dublin. But I did have friends in school who were a little older and more, attuned to what was going on. When this thing kicked off in Northern Ireland, it was just a reflection of what was happening in the United States with the civil rights movement.
Right.
So the nationalist community in that 6 counties in the north had no access to equal employment, no access to proper housing, sanitation, met all of the same things. We were the underclass citizen up there. And as soon as they started with the civil rights protests, the response by the British government was to send in a special crack troop called the B Specials. And these B Specials, they didn't take any shit. They came in with the batons and the tear gas and the water cannon and the rubber bullets and plastic bullets, and they took the lives and the eyesight and the health of many people with that tactic. And then when that didn't stop the protests, they took a character who formed the Mau Mau, who put down the Mau Mau revolt in Kenya, and took him to Northern Ireland to take over the military affairs of Northern Ireland. And within 2 weeks of him getting here, he orchestrated crack assassins, snipers on the rooftops, and they enacted what became known on a U2 record as Bloody Sunday. They shot indiscriminately and killed another 13 or 14 people in the crowd before the crowd dispersed. And that was their tactic. Just shoot us indiscriminately like dogs and put down the protests. Of course, that only further escalated the matter, which is what they wanted. And it brought out the petrol bombs and the rioting and the barricades and cordoning off communities from the police and not letting them in. Because then what they did was they started raiding Irish communities and taking young teenage boys and men without trial, handcuffed, into internment camps, prison camps, H Block, the Maze prison. There's 3 or 4 main prisons. No trial, no nothing, kept on in there under lock and key. And that's when the hunger strikers started putting on protests within the prisons and refusing to cooperate and looking for political status. And some of them even starved themselves to death. One of them, notably, one Bobby Sands. And his starvation, which took over quite a long time, I forgot the number of days, but he eventually passed. It was a milestone because he had been elected by the community in his native town of Derry, which they call Londonderry, into the British Parliament. So he was a member of the British Parliament representing the Irish national community, and he refused to take his seat. He couldn't take his seat because he was in an internment camp in prison. So there he starved to death. And you will find that in the city of Tehran and others in the Middle East, but particularly in Tehran, there's a street called after him, Bobby Sands.
Wow.
So his death brought a lot of attention, unwanted attention to the British from around the world for their human rights atrocities here, having thousands of people locked up in cages without trial and enforcing their brutality and making the only possible response of the native community was to try and bomb them. I had a colleague, a neighbor that I grew up with as a child in that town of Clones. And he planted a bomb. He joined and he planted a bomb in Belfast outside the courthouse, the main courthouse. And of course, he got caught for doing it and he was sentenced to 30 years. And later, I think he may have been released on amnesty with the Good Friday Agreement as a political prisoner. But other than that, he'd be still in there or dead.
Another neighbor of yours.
Pretty much the policies of the British administration over the last 50 years has been to incite the response through provocation, and with that to respond by bringing in more draconian laws, which was the goal in the first place. Now that these laws are established on record, such as the Offences Against the State Act, which pretty much gives the government the power to close down the protests in so many different ways. So, you know, it's problem, reaction, solution.
Yeah. They create the problems to give the solutions.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah. Listen, Jim, you were just going to say something, your neighbors. You said something about Chief's neighbors?
Yeah, another couple of neighbors of the chief from Clonus. They killed Lord Mountbatten. They put a bomb on Mountbatten's boat.
That's King Charles' uncle, by the way.
Whose uncle?
King Charles, his uncle.
Yeah, King Charles' uncle,
yeah, and his homosexual pedophile fucking handler. You know. Yeah.
I was gonna ask, Chief, your father was an official, right? So whose side was he on?
He worked for our state, the Republic of Ireland, as a customs and excise officer. He came in at a lowly rank, but he worked his way up to the highest position in uniform. And he had the biggest retirement in the history of the customs force when he retired. And his signature would have been known without question in the Revenue Commission, Taxation Department. Anybody of authority would recognize his signature and never question it. He actually was entrusted with TOR, transfer of residence, of one author of all the James Bond novels.
Oh, wow.
You know what we're talking about?
I can't remember the name, but...
Well, he was MI6, and when he retired, he thought to write his books, all the James Bond books and all of that. So in order to get out of paying taxation in England, which was higher, Ireland at the time had a clause that gave artists and writers and musicians a 0 tax rating if they were residing here for more than 6 months. Wow. So Ian Fleming is the name of the author. And when he retired, he moved to Ireland. And my father was entrusted with his private, all of his personal belongings, all of that, to do his transfer of residence. And it was at that time, my father told me this afterwards, actually in the months before he died in hospital, we used to speak about things. And 3 times in his career, he was offered to be admitted into the Freemasons. And he refused each time because of religious grounds. He himself was a staunch Catholic and very much connected with the Second Vatican Council and the Irish Ecumenical Council and like that in the 60s. And there was a prohibition in Ireland and for Catholics around the world up until John the 23rd removed it, or Pope Paul VI rather, to be a Catholic and to be a Freemason. He knew that, you know, it was one or the other, and he kept with his faith and refused to take the vow. So Ian Fleming was quite.
Did you know this? I'm sorry. Did you know this when you were a kid about your father?